Hi friends! Doctors are trained to save lives, but we too are surrounded by the same food that shave everyone's lives. Many of us are flabbergasted with the food options served at doctors' conferences and lounges, filled with ultra-processed snacks, cookies, and white bread sandwiches. Even health summits serving nothing but lab-made junk, except maybe a sad apple. And the irony? These are the people advising you on health, but society doesn't make it easy for us. The real problem isn't just ignorance. It's how deep the system runs. We've all been forced to normalize fake food as fuel. And most of us, we can't keep up with the science behind what's hitting our plates, let alone yours. It's hard even for me. But a few people, including my homeschooling friends, they figured it out early by doing 3 simple things. Before I share those, let me show you why even doctors like me struggle to untangle what your diet really is doing to your body. Here's the story that hits close to home. Take a look at food served in doctors' lounges or doctors' conferences. This is a Human Health Services Food is Medicine Summit luncheon. They're serving potato chips, cookies, sandwiches, and croissants made from white, refined, processed wheat flour, except for the apple and potato chips. We think that this is a healthy diet. This is not. This is also a highly restrictive diet, primarily eating one incomplete grain, wheat. We're not even serving the whole wheat. The person blogging this post is complaining that there's no labels for gluten-free or allergies. But she too is missing the main point. Just because it's gluten-free and allergy-free doesn't mean it's good for you to eat. And this is why we are all struggling with diet, even doctors. But I'm not just talking about my colleagues who are traditional medical doctors, either with an MD or DO, but I'm also talking about PhDs, dentists, chiropractors, etc., etc. Everything on that table, except for the apple, is ultra-processed food that was invented from a lab like your kitchen. If you like to bake, you're essentially a food scientist. Are you making healthy food, or are you putting a bunch of chemicals together? Now, how can anyone keep track of the scientific lab creations that keep popping up on our grocery shelves or your dining room table daily? Many of these processed chemicals change your body, like guar gum. They change your gut microbiome, which in turn changes your immunity. And your food interacts with your prescription drugs. Here's a common example. Have you ever had diarrhea, fevers, headaches? Now, this could be a flu, or it could be the symptom of serotonin syndrome, which is a life-threatening condition. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that your body and brain needs on a daily basis to keep you happy and pooping. Yep, it is responsible for both. But just like everything else in life, too much of a good thing is not so good. Serotonin syndrome can happen when there is a buildup of too much histamine or tyramine in the body. Histamine and tyramine are both biogenic amines which occur during fermentation or breakdown of your food by your microbiome. Now, guess which foods are high in histamine? Do you eat sandwiches? Maybe with some salami and cheese? Both of them are fermented foods. Have you smelled blue cheese? Stinky, right? Really, all normal cheeses are fermented, even American cheese. Now, when was the last time you brought a food diary into your doctor's office? Unless we have a food diary with a list of ingredients, I'm sure it's really hard for you to remember what you ate and to know what was in your food. And it's nearly impossible for your doctor to understand what you're exposing your body to. Now, the concept of cheese is very interesting because in America, I'm not quite sure we understand what normal cheese is. Is American cheese normal? Did you know that the American cheese was actually invented in Switzerland in 1911? Apparently, it was originally made out of heated, shredded Swiss cheese combined with sodium citrate an emulsifying agent to make a shelf-stable cheese product. Guess why the Swiss invented it? Believe it or not, it was invented as an effort to reduce cheese waste. They took scraps from various batches of cheese, melted it together to form a new product. But then a Canadian named James Kraft took that idea to the United States, patented his formula, and the rest is a multi-million-dollar craft food industry. And the reason why a Swiss invention is called American cheese. And in America, we embrace recycling. We love to turn waste products into treasures. Now, how does that saying go? One man's trash is another one's treasure? And that pretty much sums up whey protein, collagen, and American cheese. We also tend not to like simple, single ingredient natural foods. And to us, unless you process it, it's almost not edible. Now notice on a back of a package of a Kraft Singles, the ingredients aren't so short. It doesn't say pasteurized milk, cheese culture, salt enzymes, like this package, or just cultured milk, salt enzymes. Instead it says cheddar cheese, skim milk, milk protein concentrate, whey, calcium phosphate, sodium phosphate, modified food starch, salt, lactic acid, milk, sorbic acid, and a preservative, oleous resin, paprika for color, and cheese color, annatto color. And I'm not just picking on Kraft. Let's take a look at Lucerne. The ingredients on this list includes American cheese, which is milk, whey culture, salt, and enzymes. That's pretty clean if they just stopped there. But then they added water, milk protein concentrate, tricalcium phosphate, whey, modified food starch, sodium citrate, non-fat dry milk, cream, dairy product solids, salt, citric acid, sorbic acid, lactic acid, color added, natural flavor, and vitamin D3. Now, I'm not a cheese connoisseur. I don't even eat cheese, nor am I Swiss. But I did visit Switzerland, and this is nowhere near the ingredients list on Swiss cheese. So technically, I don't think those products count as real cheese in Switzerland. In America, we like chemistry. There's so much chemistry going on in our food, but fermentation is probably not one of them in these products. Even bacteria will struggle to thrive in a sea of toxic chemicals. The FDA has a pretty loose definition of what qualifies as cheese in America. And why do you think companies don't keep food simple? I got a simple answer for that. Cost savings. We are trained to look for bargains, and the only way they give us bargains is to skimp on the ingredients. But if you're going to buy expensive aged cheese like Gruyere, Emmental, Parmesan, just know that they will have higher histamine levels, which will have been even higher if you pair those cheeses with red wine, aged sausages, and certain types of fish. In fact, you can actually get histamine poisoning, also known as scromboid poisoning, when you eat fish that hasn't been properly handled and stored due to bacteria breaking down histidine into histamines. Now, certain species of fish are particularly susceptible, including tuna, mackerel, mahi-mahi, amberjack, and herring. A couple years ago, I was driving home when I got a call from a neurosurgeon friend. He was in Hawaii vacationing, and a couple of hours after, he and his wife enjoyed a nice, luxurious, relaxing seafood lunch by the beach, he started getting an itchy rash, headache, and flushing. His symptoms ultimately resolved with the help of some over-the-counter antihistamines. These are common symptoms of histamine overload. Other symptoms can include redness in the face, nausea, vomiting, abdominal cramps, diarrhea, tingling, and burning in the mouth and throat, lightheadedness and dizziness, and rapid heartbeats. Now, if you're experiencing these symptoms, don't just assume it's your food. You should see a medical doctor. These symptoms are actually non-specific and can even potentially represent a heart attack. But this is the power of food. You can imagine that it is very difficult for your doctors to predict how your food will interact with your body, especially when we don't know the ingredients. So if you're having difficulty tolerating your food, you may want to consider a food diary to write down the foods you eat and the associated symptoms that you feel. Show your food diary to your own medical doctor. High histamine symptoms, they fall on a spectrum of symptoms for serotonin syndrome. Now you can think of it as a gentler version of serotonin syndrome. And normally serotonin syndrome, it doesn't happen unless you're taking medications that inhibit monoamine oxidase, which is the enzyme that breaks down serotonin. Eating more histamine-rich foods encourages your body to build up serotonin, and if you can't remove it, then you can quickly build an excess. And unlike having extra cash stashed, extra serotonin is dangerous. Combining histamine and tyramine have a worse effect, which is often the result of a food and drug interaction. It's especially important to be cautious about eating fermented foods if you take antimicrobials. Two antimicrobials, one to treat tuberculosis called isoniazid, and the second to treat gram-positive bacteria called linezolid, they both can act as a monoamine oxidase inhibitor.
Hi friends, I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes, and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now.
Now, mild symptoms also include tremors, diarrhea, headache, flushing, nervousness, and insomnia. And if your doctor looked in your eyes, they would see that you would have enlarged pupils. Now, moderate symptoms would include sweating, agitation, rhythmic muscle spasms, what we call clonus, labile blood pressure, either hypo or hypertensive. Severe symptoms would include a fever of 101.3 Fahrenheit, sustained clonus and rigidity, mental confusion or delirium, and even rhabdomyolysis, which is a breakdown of muscle. So here's a list of high tyramine or histamine containing foods to avoid when you're on certain medications. Check with your doctor which medications that would be. Remember, this is not medical advice, so don't start or stop anything until you talk to your own medical doctor. I hear a lot of people frustrated with their own personal doctors and turning to social media for advice. But the advice is everywhere, so who's right? Well, believe it or not, no one is completely wrong. Everyone has some good pointers. Their degree or credential doesn't necessarily mean they are more credible. But I do find it suspicious that many doctors don't clearly state what kind of doctor they are. What is your specialty? Regardless, I have a simple litmus test. If they have discovered a new and improved diet that people don't know about and they're the only ones and you have to join their club, well, that's probably because it doesn't work for longevity. I asked Google how many people have lived on this earth. 108 billion people have lived on this earth. Don't you think that someone would have tried their diet? People aren't that stupid. If something is that good, everybody else would do it. How do you think white rice has been eaten since 7,000 BC and sugar since 8,000 BC? Come on, folks. If a diet existed to propel longevity that only a selective group of people did, then we're pretty stupid, right? Fat diets is like inventing a new cheese. Do you really think the American version of American cheese is better quality than traditional Swiss cheeses from Switzerland? I think the other problem is that doctors assume people are eating well. And even when patients admit they eat junk, we assume that they're getting all their vital nutrients in the rest of their food choices. As a result, many doctors, they don't recommend supplements. Let me show you this recommendation by UpToDate, a subscription medical reference used by over 2 million health professionals worldwide. Now, personally, do you take a multivitamin? I do. But many of my colleagues from very elite schools, they actively discourage people from taking multivitamins and consider vitamins to be a waste of money. Even this very popular website, UpToDate, used by millions of doctors around the world, literally states, in healthy people with adequate dietary intake, we suggest not taking multivitamin supplementation to prevent chronic diseases. Now, the first problem that I have with this is, what is their definition of healthy? The majority of people I know, they are not healthy in or outside of the hospital. Getting healthy is not a one-time deal where you have perfect lab numbers. I mean, of course, it's easy to identify the super sick, those who are at the hospital, those who need surgery, those who are struggling with symptoms. But the silent unhealthy is the majority. The reality is anyone who's struggling with sleeping well, fatigue, and have to depend on caffeine and sugar to wake up, have dry skin, soreness, chapped lips, overweight, sedentary, mood disorders, I think we can all agree are not healthy. And for people who think that they're doing well, but then they find invisible low vitamin D levels, or they wake up one day with a fracture, well, they haven't been healthy for years. They just didn't know it. That was me. Thank goodness I never had a fracture, but I had a single-digit vitamin D level. And hence, we have an epidemic of silent, chronic, medical, healthy people, and all of a sudden they wake up one day with diseases like cancer and dementia that generally start a couple of decades before people actually see signs and symptoms. The average American spends 12 and a half years suffering before they kick the bucket. So I think we all need to have a different definition for healthy. Despite some doctors believing multivitamins are expensive pee, there are several large trials now that have been going on for several years suggesting that taking a daily multivitamin may improve your memory and slow your cognitive aging in older adults. And even skeptics from Harvard have changed their mind about taking a multivitamin. Now, my brother and I, we view multivitamins as an insurance policy. Now, I'm not trying to dump on my profession. I'm just recognizing that we all have differences of opinion, and there's nothing wrong with their opinion. But The problem is we all have a limit to our knowledge. There are known knowns, and there are things that we know that we know. There are known unknowns. That is to say, there are things that we know we don't know. But there are also unknown unknowns. There are things that we don't know we don't know. That's actually a direct quote from Donald Rumsfeld, and it can be applied to just about everything in life. Unfortunately, there are too many medical professionals who are still dogmatic about their viewpoint with nutrition, as if they're studying prescription drugs. And yet they're willing to stuff their mouths with all these chemical additives in our food as if it doesn't count as a drug, as if it has no biological effect on their health. Do you see the irony? My friend, if that is your viewpoint, good luck to you. You're a voluntary participant in our giant food experiment. Getting your nutrition right is like getting your retirement account right. Everybody has a different opinion on what you should invest in. You don't just wake up one day broke. Maybe these days you may, with the stock market fluctuating. And it doesn't just miraculously happen that you're financially secure. You're either spending beyond your means for a lifetime or saving and investing for a lifetime. Nutrition works the same way. You become micronutrient deficient when you're eating diets that are deficient in micronutrients. And we have multiple papers recording dietary micronutrient deficiencies. The fastest way to get there is to eat ultra-processed foods. This is dietary restriction. Here's another excerpt from Up to Date. Many of our vitamin deficiencies, such as scurvy, beriberi, and pellagra, have been almost completely eliminated in resource-rich countries, except in the occasional patient with underlying medical disorders or highly restrictive diets. Now, do you see what's wrong with this statement? The first problem is the average American is eating the standard American diet, which is full of ultra-processed, carb-heavy, added sugar-heavy, and added fat-heavy foods. This is actually a form of dietary restriction. And public health thinks we've solved our vitamin deficiencies through fortification because we don't see the end-stage diseases that we used to see. So we've fortified refined grains, yet lots of people are actually not eating refined grains. They're eating chemicals like sugars, artificial sweeteners, candy. And so those aren't fortified by, let's say, the most important vitamin for your health, vitamin B1. In fact, if you fasted for food, vitamin B1 or thiamine deficiency would be the reason why you would kick the bucket. And if we fed people who starve and didn't actually give them thiamine, they also wouldn't survive. Look at the back of your energy drink. If they don't have thiamine, they don't understand energy metabolism. Thiamine is crucial for energy metabolism. But the thing is, thiamine isn't just important for energy metabolism. It is pivotal to maintain a healthy nervous system, to support myelin sheath, to produce neurotransmitters. The lack of myelin sheath causes nerve damage with symptoms of pain and neuropathy, brain fog, memory loss, mood disorders. Did I mention that thiamine deficiency can cause heart failure? 1 in 4 of you will develop heart failure in your lifetime. Your heart is a muscle, just like your biceps, that needs thiamine for metabolism to contract. So if you feel weak, maybe your diet is thiamine deficient. How about your immune system? Thiamine plays a pivotal role in boosting your immune system by supporting the production of white blood cells, which fight infections. Hence, there is no body part that won't suffer if you don't get enough thiamine. The more carbohydrates you eat, the more thiamine you actually need. The more active you are, the more thiamine you will need. Too many Americans think that when our tummies are full, we are nourished. But we are a nation of overfed and undernourished. We are overeating empty calories. Eating a lot does not mean we are eating well. My husband had a medical school classmate who ate gummy bears every day. Bags and bags of gummy bear. I saw it with my own eyes. She traveled with a giant bag of gummy bears. My college roommate only ate microwave popcorn. My son has a classmate who only eats hot dogs. And my family wasn't much better because I allowed my sons to eat hot dogs with onion rings whenever we ate out. He was a super picky eater, so it was easier for me to give him what he wanted than to make him eat what was better for him. And I know a medical doctor who eats only protein bars. Children with highly restrictive diets grow up into adults with highly restrictive diets. I once met someone whose favorite food was Coke and cheese pizza, which she ate for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Love bacon? My best friend would only eat bacon and French fries. She's also a medical doctor. And I met someone who only ate bacon and ice cream. You either correct your dietary restrictions or you succumb to the diseases of diet. I have a friend who is my age who has advanced dementia. His diet was centered around simple sugar and cereal. He literally ate white sugar from the bucket. Processed foods, no matter how much vitamins are added, are not healthy. And there are few people in America who aren't micronutrient deficient. Most people eat a highly restrictive diet, whether they want to believe it or not. How many people go to Costco just for their hot dogs? The consequences of nutrient deficiencies are silent until they're catastrophic. My dad suffered a spinal fracture due to vitamin D deficiency. When his doctors checked it, he had 0 vitamin D. He spent his retirement ages indoors and didn't know that a simple supplement with vitamin D could fix it. His spinal surgeon called me after surgery to tell me that my dad's bone was so soft that he wasn't sure that the hardware he placed would stay in place. There's no such thing as being too obsessed with health. People actually are not obsessed enough about their health or are too focused on a narrow spectrum of health, like a single parameter, like a blood sugar, and they miss the big picture. It's like forgetting to look at the forest and just focusing on a tree, or getting straight A's, except for that one class, the one that's your least favorite subject that you don't really want to go or learn. Nobody can help you learn or master your health, just like nobody can give you financial security except for yourself. Medical doctors are like financial advisors. We can only guide you, but you have to do the investments. However, the wrong guidance can bankrupt you, even if things initially appear rosy. Now, here is a list of vitamins to focus on in your diet given to healthcare professionals from Up to Date. There are several problems with this list. Number 1, it's incomplete. As a medical doctor in my profession for nearly 30 years, I can assure you all of your doctors want all of our patients to be healthy and independent no matter what field we are in. No one wants a person to have a bad outcome. And when people are super sick, we have special drugs and tools to help bring them back to life. And this is the function of acute care medicine or hospitalized medicine, where we watch patients 24/7 in everything that they do and eat. And you know it. If you've ever been hospitalized, you get a limited selection of food to eat, a limited ability to leave your room on your own. There's no privacy. You may not even get to pee and poop on your own. And if you were a toddler, this would be just a normal day. But as an adult, it's a shocking reality of dependence. 35% of people who get hospitalized don't make it out. Getting hospitalized is a big deal. Fixing your diet is the best way to stay out of hospitals. I recently met a lady in her 90s. I took a look at her meals and I didn't give her any nutritional advice, even if I didn't agree with them. When you make it to your 90s and are walking and talking normally, you are doing an excellent job. Unfortunately, most people don't make it to their 90s, and the field of medicine has been very slow to embrace nutrition. But many of us are slowly coming around. It's like your smartphone and iPads. I was talking to my pastor this weekend, and we were talking about how our generation has been the social experiment. But his generation, as a young parent, they've woken up about the importance of restricting access to gadgets to preserve their children's mental and physical health. My generation of doctors and those before me have been a part of this social experiment with you. Many of my mentors in residency, they're gone now. They were some of the smartest, nicest doctors who trained hundreds of doctors. Unfortunately, I watched them eat ultra-processed foods served to us in hospitals. Donuts, bagels, french fries, muffins, hamburgers. I ate the same foods. Some of my mentors actually would have to take cigarette breaks during rounds. Doctors actually make the worst patients because many of us don't connect the dots that what we're treating is what can happen to us too. We think that we're immune to the diseases we treat. We minimize our symptoms. We work long hours. We eat processed foods. We sleep poorly, and we refuse to ask for help. I know a plastic surgeon who lost 30 pounds of weight unintentionally. He was having abdominal pain for several months, but refused to see a doctor until he literally couldn't get off the couch because he was throwing up all day. He had colon cancer. Thank God he is in remission now. Unfortunately, social media gives people sideways advice, which is advice that initially looks good, like you're going somewhere, you lose some weight, but you actually end up making a lateral move. It's like buying a house and initially you think you've earned all this money selling your old house, but in the end, you actually owe more money upgrading to your new house. Over 3 decades, I have witnessed the destruction of our immunity, our metabolism, as our food choices have gravitated towards ultra-processed foods that are convenient and designed to fill and please our palates. I also consider pharmaceuticals to be a designer product, falsely promising that your life will be better, that it's just so easy to pop a pill, discounting side effects. discounting the fact that it's changing your gut microbiome, your metabolism, and your immunity. Medications are like harnesses in life, designed to help you when you're climbing up a mountainside. Don't you feel like that when you're ill? Unfortunately, many people are stuck on an uphill climb in life, and they can't get rid of their harness. And those who get their diet right can set themselves free. And those who don't, those who continue the wrong diet, will free fall and require actually more harnesses until they don't work. And if you don't work inside hospitals or serve as a chronic caregiver, you may not understand that the worst thing in life is the suffering for about 12 years before you meet the mortician. Health is your number one most important asset, and it is fundamental for you to thrive. Why would anyone outsource that to someone else? Yet many people, they don't bother to take a formal nutrition class or even care to learn about the nutrition of the lunch that they just ate. Luckily, social media isn't all bad. You now have access to learn from world's experts like Christopher Gardner from Stanford, Walter Willett from Harvard, two sound voices studying nutrition for a lifetime, which have influenced what I eat and how I practice medicine. I'm actually related to a person who earned a PhD in biochemistry from Harvard, and we still debate about how food interacts with the human body. He learned the science of individual chemicals, but in reality, we don't eat individual chemicals. We eat it together, emulsified with actual nutrients that are chemicals too. Unfortunately, our food is so highly chemicalized that it's hard to tell the difference. These modern creations not only change our biology because the building material is no longer the same for repair, but they also change the biology of your gut microbiome, which in turn changes your metabolism and immunity. Gar gum is damaging to your microbiome. So how did we all get here? Well, the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century was also the rise of factory food processing, which ignited food additives to extend shelf life. This can last on my shelf for several weeks. This only lasts a few days. Now, during our lifetime in the late 20th century, an explosion of food additives, both natural and artificial, flooded our store shelves. Unlike big pharma drugs, where they have to prove safety to be sold to the public, food additives are allowed until they're expected to be unsafe. Does this sound right to you? You are essentially an experimental subject whenever you choose to eat chemicals buried in your food. Remember aspartame? Aspartame is an artificial low-calorie sweetener that is 200 times sweeter than sugar. It's used in diet sodas and candies. It's designed to satisfy your brain by tricking your metabolism. You can fool your brain, but you can't fool your metabolism. In 2023, the World Health Organization declared aspartame to be a possible human carcinogen. That was actually several decades too late for me. I drank my first diet soda with aspartame in high school. My brother brought it home. If he didn't buy it, I would never have had the opportunity to try it. And I can remember it as if it was yesterday. I opened a can of diet soda that I brought from home. It was in my cooler lunch bag. It was actually still cold. And I was so excited, I flipped open the lid and tasted it. It had such an awful aftertaste. I had to throw the entire can away, and I debated on whether or not I should spit the stuff in my mouth. Well, I ended up swallowing it to not bring any attention to myself. But those diet sodas kept showing up at home because my brother brought them home. So eventually, my memory faded of how awful the first taste was, and I tried it again. I literally trained my palate to enjoy drinking diet soda. And for several years, I was hooked on it. My favorite flavor was lemon-flavored diet soda. And thank God I gave that up. Haven't touched a diet soda for over a decade now. I know there are people who don't agree that aspartame is potentially carcinogenic. I personally disagree with them. Aspartate is made out of a dipeptide, which is 2 amino acids, like your muscles. Your digestive enzymes will break that aspartame down into methanol, aspartic acid, and phenylalanine, which are all harmful at high doses. They are actually believed to be more harmful than aspartame itself. Methanol is converted into formaldehyde, which is toxic to your liver. And some of you may know that your body naturally makes low doses of formaldehyde, which it's equipped to handle. But when you add extra to your body, you don't have the equipment to handle that. To me, it's like slowly embalming myself. Formaldehyde is what I used to inhale in gross anatomy lab because we were surrounded by cadavers. This stuff is used by morticians who have higher rates of certain cancers. So I'm not sure why medical students are forced to go in gross anatomy lab without a gas mask. Personally, I think this debate is a waste of time. Why are people debating on a chemical that serves no biological purpose for our health and potentially can contribute to our astronomical rates of cancer? And it's not just aspartame. Pick your favorite artificial sweetener or sugar substitute. I think intuitively, most people understand it's wrong to lie. And every time you choose to eat a sugar substitute and artificial sweetener, you are essentially trying to lie to your own metabolism to pleasure your brain. But the thing is, you can't fool your metabolism even though you can fool your brain. These chemicals are changing your metabolism. They change your gut microbiome. Besides diet soda, I ate a lot of aspartame-rich candy as a kid. I'm sure my gut microbiome was altered because I was a pretty fat kid. Fat and lazy is what my brothers used to call me. And that's because I eat a bunch of ultra-processed food. And when you eat ultra-processed food, that makes your brain hungrier. So you tend to eat more food. And it makes you sedentary because now you release all the dopamine eating that food. So if you're struggling with an overweight kid who doesn't want to move, you have to stop bringing home the ultra-processed poisons. If you yourself are finding difficulty in getting up from the couch, look at what you're eating. Read the ingredients. Write it down. And you may one day think twice about eating it. Again, why are we trying to trick our metabolism? Unfortunately, medicines were never really designed to be a way of life. Hence, most people with high blood pressure end up needing 2 or more drugs. No wonder 1 in 7 people have kidney disease. Like everyone else, doctors too enjoy childhood favorite treats. We feed our children what we want to eat because we use our kids as an excuse to eat poorly. It's very unfortunate we have generations of people brainwashed by commercials, hooked on all sorts of processed foods, from breakfast cereals to pizza bites. The ability for food manufacturers to advertise US started in posters in the late 19th century to now social media influencers in the 21st century. Chances are you learn everything you know about nutrition from social media. And everybody and their grandmothers has a book to sell you on a diet. And do you know why the food industry is so good at advertising? Well, it's because they're owned by the tobacco industry. In the 1980s, the pharmaceutical industry figured out their playbook and began copying the food industry, advertising directly to consumers. And this is another reason why we have an explosion of big pharma drugs. Think about, why should you know medications to treat sore throats and runny noses, or pain meds to ask for back pain? The only reason you would know unless you go to school is because you're watching too much media. By exposing yourself to these drugs, whether it's over-the-counter or prescription drugs, you are altering your metabolism, your microbiome, and your immunity. But again, this isn't medical advice, so don't just stop taking your medications until you speak to your own personal doctor. But we're finally waking up. More people are realizing that taking prescription medications, including antibiotics, will dramatically alter your gut microbiome. And so a lot of people are now avoiding it. And they question whether or not they should take an antibiotic because altering your gut microbiome can potentially impact how a drug that you actually need will work. So don't think that when you go overseas and you buy that penicillin that over the counter that it's a good thing. And antibiotics are one of my pet peeves. I hate to say it, but most of my colleagues, they don't know how to prescribe antibiotics appropriately. And that's why we're in an era, really the post-antibiotic era, with a massive rise of multi-drug resistant microbes. So if your doctor is giving you any medications, including antibiotics, it's absolutely okay to question that, to ask them if it's necessary, to ask them if there's another less harmful way to your gut microbiome and immunity. And if they take offense to it, get yourself a new doctor. There are plenty of us who practice differently. And remember, it's not just antibiotics that will change your microbiome. Proton pump inhibitors for stomach acid can increase your risk of Clostridium difficile colitis, also known as C. diff. Metformin can alter your gut microbiome. Metformin is not a longevity drug if you don't have carbohydrate metabolism issues. Antidepressants like selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors can also increase pathogenic bacteria. Laxatives can change your microbiome, and not steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs that are commonly sold over the counter will alter the defense of your gut, making you more susceptible to intestinal damage. And again, this isn't medical advice. These are just facts you can look up in the drug website. Don't just stop any of these drugs without talking to your own personal doctor. Some of these drugs can have very bad withdrawal symptoms if you just stop without supervision. Your gut is your largest immune organ. We have an alarming astronomical rate of gastrointestinal cancers in young adults and skyrocketing rates of autoimmune diseases, which we treat, ironically, with immunosuppressive agents. And then these agents lead to higher rates of infection and higher rates of cancer. Do you see the logical consequences of this system? The trillion-dollar food industry hires food scientists who have tested for decades chemicals to get your brains to eat more of their products. Fancy marketing has convinced several generations of Americans that what they're feeding us is food. They are not food. These are chemicals engineered to look like food. Scientists and doctors were addressing the health burden caused by these scientific chemicals, but the reality is there's no amount of funding that could compete with the speed of creations marketed by this trillion-dollar processed food industry. Right now, it's a processed food wild, wild west. There's no regulations. 15,000 new food products are sold to us every year. Even evolution doesn't go that fast. And the only way to address this issue is if our government regulates it, like in Europe. Why are we counting on companies to sell us real food when their incentive is profits? And until the government addresses our food safety, like seatbelt and car safety, it'll be up to each of us individually to encourage all of us collectively to pressure the food industry to stop putting crap in our food products. And I do see traction. They are selling better ingredients. Have you noticed that the same processed foods that you used to eat as a kid, they don't actually taste the same? That's because they're not the same. Processed food companies keep changing the ingredients to meet their financial pocketbooks. And in the process, they remove fresh ingredients. They add chemicals like high fructose corn syrups. They add additional sweeteners and chemical preservatives. And of course, our FDA, they allow a certain amount of these ingredients in a specific food, but they don't count for the additive cumulative effect of repeat exposures from multiple different foods. Now, I doubt anyone who eats candy only eats one brand of candy or only eats one candy. The FDA is too busy regulating drugs that 64.8% of Americans take instead of ensuring the safety of our food supply, which 100% of us eat. And like our food system, our medical system won't take action until something is definitively proven to work by randomized double-blinded controlled trials, which was invented by Big Pharma to sell their drugs. How can you blind a person to food? Unlike drugs, it's hard-pressed to find a large group of people who aren't exposed to common food. Our food crisis should be a public health concern, but it's fallen upon the shoulders of medical doctors to address. I don't get it. It's like blaming firefighters for all the cars and matches and lighters and guns and Christmas trees and heaters that start fires. So should the fire department be involved in you purchasing your stove or installing gas in your house? No, fire safety should be taught by all of us. We should have it all the time in our schools, our homes, our colleges, our scouts. We should all know fire safety. So why are people relying on medical doctors to get their nutrition right when they've been eating for a lifetime? Does this make any sense? We should be teaching our children how to manage their nutrition and finances and not wait until they're bankrupt to have a conversation. Food and nutrition is the responsibility of the family. And as a parent, I believe it's my duty to teach my kids everything that they need to know to function well, to thrive as an adult. From washing their clothes to eating targeted foods for their health and avoiding junk that will tax their health. Medicines have enabled people not to put effort in their health and nutrition. But medicines can't build your tissues or your brain. That's why we need to eat whole foods and supplement with the right nutrients. Nutrients help us cope with the physical and mental stressors of life. When you eat the right foods, complemented by the right supplements, the effects will be subtle. But when you eat the wrong foods, like my friend who got histamine toxicity, the effects may not be so subtle. Most of the time when you eat well, it's so subtle that most people discount the ability of food to heal. And it's really odd that people just expect wounds to heal out of thin air. Your healing correlates with the foods you eat to allow your tissue to build and to close your wounds. And I think it's how we drive cars. For some reason, I just expect my car to work. But when I don't fill it up with the right gas and it starts sputtering, then I realize, it's not going to work. And on a daily basis, you know you need gas to go anywhere. And you can either wait till you're almost empty or presumptively always make sure your tank is full. And that's how I think about nutrition and health. I always try to make sure my tank is full because you never know when in an emergency you need to go somewhere. And caring for your body works just like a car. You can find a cheap gas station and put in cheap fuel, but sometimes you pay for that with a massive amount of rehabilitation for your engine. While it's easy to find a mechanic to fix your car for a price, it's not so easy to put in that care for your car on a daily basis so that you don't need the mechanic. And when you invest in your health correctly, you will need less medical care. But when you do it wrong, you will spend the last 12.5 years suffering. So here are 3 steps to start taking care of your health that many of my health-conscious fellow homeschooling moms practice, which many doctors would absolutely agree with. Number 1 is to avoid ultra-processed foods. And if you don't know which one they are, read your labels. It has chemicals a 5th grader can't pronounce, and they can't figure out that it's from food. And be careful of deceptive marketing practices. Turn your cheese around. You'll be surprised at how many contain starches, fillers, and preservatives. And if you want to make it really easy for yourself to avoid reading ingredients, then number 2, buy single ingredient foods, whole foods. So when you're shopping for middleman food, that means food that's been processed by somebody else. 7 out of 10 times, it'll have some junky ingredient. 70% of the food in your markets are convenient but engineered ultra-processed foods. And I agree, you should live your life and not spend the last decade of your life cooped up in and out of hospital beds. Now keep in mind, nobody's going to be perfect. I'm not perfect, and I'm sure you're not perfect too. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Every day is a new day to try. And did you know that in the early 19th century, many U.S. doctors smoked cigarettes? Now they didn't know it was harmful. And since then, we've learned that anything that you smell from something being burned is not going to be healthy, whether that's cooking fumes, candles, or marijuana. But knowing how harmful something is doesn't necessarily motivate a person to avoid it. In 2010, 44% of Italian health professionals smoked. 48% of their nurses smoked, and 34% of their doctors smoked. Now, finally, in the US, we've got something right because less than 10% of health professionals smoke now. But when I was a resident in cardiology, my attending smoked. He actually had to go outside and take several smoke breaks in the middle of rounding. Rounding, in case you didn't know, is when doctors get together to talk about cases. Unfortunately, he didn't make it past 79, which is still longer than the age an average American lives. Now, if you're a smoker, you're acquiring high levels of oxidation. So you need higher levels of antioxidants like vitamin C. Now, the RDA recommended vitamin C doesn't really apply to people with high burdens of oxidative stress like pollution, smoking, working in factories. You guys need more vitamin C. And it's not uncommon that I see people struggling with wound healing, whether that's from an accident or itchy, dry skin. So number 3, what all health conscious people do is to continue to learn about health. Take, for example, wound healing. Many people think that they're just supposed to make flesh out of air. No, you actually have to have healthy mitochondria to repair tissue. And if you want to learn more about that, watch the next video.